So the Pokemon Regulation G rule set has been announced, and it allows you to use one restricted Pokemon per team. So I thought I'd do a tier list of how good I think each restricted Pokemon is going to be in VGC. Now I have played some Showdown games and seen what other people are saying about the format to try and judge how good I think each one is going to be. Obviously S tier is like busted, the best restricted. A is they're pretty good, but they're not quite as good as the best ones, but you'll still see them used quite a lot. B, they have some niches and can definitely work, but they're not necessarily the best ones. C, you probably shouldn't use, but you'll see like one or two in every like top 128 of a regional or something. And then D is don't use it. D for don't use. I'm going to start with the Calyrex forms, and you'll see why. So normal Calyrex, don't use it, it's just pretty bad. Calyrex Shadow is the best restricted. I am going to order S, A and B tiers, but not the C and D. It's just got a really powerful spread move. It outspeeds all the rest. Ghost hits so many things for neutral, but I think it's just very good. You can also run it with Expanding Force, you could run Specs on it, Sash on it, Life Orb on it. It's got so many options. You can go a more support route as well and have Will-O-Wisp, but you want this to be doing the damage. So Calyrex Shadow I think is going to be meta defining. Every team needs to have a good answer for Calyrex Shadow. Calyrex Ice I also think is S tier. It's not quite as good as Calyrex Shadow, mainly because it needs the Trick Room, but it's a lot bulkier. And Ice hits a lot of things for very good damage, and you can also run high horsepower on it, and it gets its own Trick Room, so it can set up its own Trick Room. And there's so many good support options to help it set up Trick Room. You can have Ogerpon for Follow Me, Incin and Rillaboom for Fake Outs, Farigiraf to set up Trick Room and stop other Fake Outs, or Porygon 2 for really bulky Trick Room that's good into Calyrex Shadow. So I would still put it in S, even though it relies on Trick Room a lot. Next is Koraidon, and initially I didn't think Koraidon was going to be very good. But actually after seeing it being used and seeing people talk about it, I think it's A tier, but it's probably on the lower half of A. It can set up Sun, which is really good for enabling certain Pokemon like Flutter Mane. And it can just hit a lot of Pokemon for pretty good damage. I'm not sure what the best item on it is going to be. It does get Scale Shot, so Loaded Dice Scale Shot could be good. But then also something like Clear Amulet or Assault Vest makes a lot of sense, and you're probably going to be Terra Fire with Flare Blitz, because that's pretty good defensively and it gives you Stab Flare Blitz. Miraidon is a Pokemon, if you asked me a week ago, I'd have put it at the top of S. But now I'm going to put it at the top of A. I think one of the biggest things holding it back, which Koraidon also has, is it doesn't have a really powerful spread move. Another issue with Miraidon is you can really reduce how much damage it does just by changing terrain. And a lot of teams are going to have a Rillaboom for this reason. But in terrain, it can still do a lot of damage. Its terrain can give certain Pokemon abilities that haven't before, like Iron Hands and Iron Bundle. So I think I'm going to put Miraidon at top of A. I can see it moving into S, but A is probably where it should be. I think Specs is pretty good on it, but Electric Seed or Leftovers with Carmine I think will be probably the best set. Now Terapagos at first I thought would be awful, but I'm going to put it in A as well. So with Terapagos, you're going to want to be setting Carmines up with it. When it's in its non-stellar form, it basically has a better multi-scale that the first move that hits you, you will resist, which is really good for setting up. And then once you've set up enough Carmines, you can Terra it and go for Terra Starstorm. And that is a base 120 move that is neutral into everything, right? That's two-shotting most of the format. So all you need is one or two Carmines, and that's really good. But the issue with Terapagos is you kind of need a Carmine to do enough damage, and it really needs the Terra, so it does give you less options when playing with it, as it's not very good without its Terra, but it also is amazing into Calyrex Shadow, which is a huge reason why it's in A tier. Mewtwo's D tier, there's literally no reason to use it. You want a powerful Psychic type, you go Calyrex Shadow. You want a bulky Psychic type, you go like Lunala or Lugia, which probably aren't that great anyway. Lugia C tier, you could maybe do like Carmine stuff with like multi-scale and recover and stuff, but like it's weak to both Calyrexes, it's weak to this. It's just not that great. Now Ho-Oh is an interesting one, and I think I'm going to put Ho-Oh in B tier. It does have really good special defense. I mean, the same special defense as Lugia, but much better typing, so it should be quite good into like Calyrex Shadow for that. It's also quite good into Koraidon with the flying typing. It could Sacred Fire Cali Ice. It's actually really good into a lot of the restricteds. Groudon if it doesn't run rock moves, which I don't think they will. And the only two restricteds it really struggles against are Kyogre and Miraidon, which if you run Terra Grass, you then beat because of your great special defense. So I think Ho-Oh actually has a lot of potential. It's really good into a lot of restricteds. It's just not that good of a restricted itself. Like, it's got a positive matchup into so many things, but it's not very good. It's not threatening too much damage like a lot of the other restricteds are. It doesn't have a great spread move, but it does have like Recover and Tailwind, so you can get a lot of use out of it, so I'm putting it in B tier. Kyogre, I'm putting in A. Kyogre used to be incredible. I would say used to be the best restricted in some formats. But it's a lot harder to use now with Rillaboom around. There's water Ogerpons. There's really good Tailwind users, so you need Tailwind with your Kyogre because you want to be getting those water spouts off. Miraidon's really good into it. There's just a lot that resists water, but I am still putting it in A just because it's so good. I think you could even potentially see like Scarf Kyogre with a Swift Swim user, maybe like Basculegion or something. Maybe that could be good, but just spamming water spouts is really powerful if you can position it correctly. I think this format, in some matchups, you are just going to have to be very careful about how you position it, especially into, say, Miraidon. Groudon, I'm also going to put in A. I don't know if I'd put it above or below Kyogre. I think below, and I think I'm going to put it above Koraidon. Precipice Blades is obviously really good if you hit. Groudon does rely on Precipice Blades, however, whereas Kyogre a lot of the time will be water spouting. So when you're using Groudon, you are accepting that a move you're going to be clicking a lot of the time has a 15% chance to miss. Clear Amulet is almost definitely the best item on Groudon. You can maybe go Assault Vest, but I think something like Clear Amulet with Precipice Blades, Heat Crash, Swords Dance or Substitute, and then Protect. And then you go Terrifier because defensively it's pretty good. You do keep the water weakness, but if you're in Sun, that's sort of fine. And you give yourself a Stab, Heat Crash, which into a lot of things is going to be base 120. Good. It also enables stuff like Flutter Mane with Photosynthesis. Rayquaza, I'm going to put in B tier. Rayquaza is a really good example of something that can just go Terra Normal Extreme Speed, but in a lot of cases, Dragonite is probably better, because it can't be intimidated, fake outed, and it doesn't use up your restricted slot. But Rayquaza does get Source Dance, so I can imagine seeing like maybe even a Clear Amulet Rayquaza next to Ogerpon lead. You go Source Dance, Follow Me, lose your Ogerpon, then you bring in Chien Pao and you start just Terra Normal +2 E-speeding stuff. With Sword of Ruin, that's surely one-shotting everything. However, it doesn't hit Calyrex Shadow with that E-speed, which is kind of huge. And it also doesn't hit Flutter Mane, so it doesn't hit one of the best non-restricteds and the best restricted with the main reason to use it, but I can see it doing pretty well. Dialga Origin Form, I'm also going to put in B. I think it's a really good Trick Room setter. Does resist water and electric whilst also not being weak to dragons, so it's a Pokemon that against a lot of restricteds you are going to be able to set up Trick Room with, but it's just not as good in Trick Room as stuff like the Calyrex Ice. So you're really going to have to make the most of your other Trick Room Pokemon if you are using Dialga. I think the Origin Form is probably better, gives you a bit more bulk, and the item that you have is pretty good anyway. I could definitely see this being used with like Ursaluna, for example, because you can go Telepathy and set up Trick Room for it and then just spam Earthquakes, which is pretty good. Regular Dialga in C, like you can maybe make an argument of using that over this one and have like Goggles on it or something, but I don't think it's that good. Palkia Origin, I'm going to put in C as well. If Palkia had this form in like 2016, it would have been so good. The extra 20 base speed really isn't that useful when you're still being outsped by like Koraidon, Miraidon, and Calyrex Shadow, and Zacian. And his typing is just not good enough into a lot of things, but I don't think it's going to be particularly good. Same with Palkia. They're just not really worth using. The Giratinas, you know, they're both weak to the Calyrexes. There's just no reason to use them. Reshiram, I think I'm also going to put in C. It got a good amount of usage in 2022, but I think it really benefited from Dynamax, and obviously Dynamax is gone. You could maybe run it on a Sun team and just have it to spam Heat Waves, but if you're doing that, why not run something like a Chi-Yu instead? Zekrom, C as well. Just use Miraidon. Like, I know it's physical and stuff, and I guess you could go like Dragon Dance and stuff, but it's really not worth it. Kieran Black has, I believe, the highest attack stat of any Pokemon in the format, so I'm going to put it in B. I think you can make some real cases for like using Kieran Black. You can go like Dragon Dance sets with Clear Amulet, it gets Scale Shot, you could go Loaded Die Scale Shot. I think it's really strong. It just probably needs a good amount of support, so because of that I am going to put it in B. Kieran White I actually think will be quite good. I'm going to put it at the top of B tier. It is just like a ice Pokemon in Snow that you're going to spam Blizzard with, probably Terra Ice and just spam Blizzard, and it's just really bulky into certain things. It's just not that great into any team that has a special attacking restricted. So because of that, it's B. I can actually see this going up to A tier, but you also are restricted with how you run it. You need to be running it on a snow team, and you're going to have to be playing Weather Wars, but it does have a good matchup into Kyogre and into Groudon. Normal Kyurem, don't use it. It's worse than both of the other Kyurem forms. These Nebby, don't use Nebby. Solgaleo I'm gonna reluctantly put in B. I think the only thing that saves it slightly is it gets wide guard, so it's actually good into Cali Shadows that don't have Shadow Ball, and I feel like wide guard's going to be huge, so Specs Cali Shadow is going to start running Shadow Ball, and it's quite good into Cali Ice. It obviously can't be intimidating and stuff. I can see like weakness policy Bulldoze working. I know a lot of people think that's only a thing that worked in Dynamax formats, but it was actually pretty big in 2017. So I can see it coming back, but I don't think it's that great. Lunala, I think I'm going to put on high B. Obviously, it gets wide guard as well. It gets Tailwind, you can run Power Herb Meteor Beam, which is pretty good, and then get to +1 and just start spamming Moongeist Beam. And Shadow Shield is a kind of insane ability. So with Shadow Shield, you're basically guaranteed to live an attack. And this gives you a lot of options, so I think Lunala will be quite good, but I don't think it will be like A tier good. Dusk Mane, I think I'm going to put it in B, but it's very low B. It does live a Calyrex Shadow's Astral Barrage and can do Trick Room stuff, and it's decent into Cali Ice, but I don't know if it's doing enough damage. It probably wants item that lets you recover HP, but it also wants Clear Amulet to stop Intimidates, so I'm going to put it in B. I think it can definitely work, but I think it's very hard to make it work. Dawn Wings, I think I'm going to put in C. It's just worse than Lunala in this case. It will get one-shot by Calyrex Shadow unless you've got insane investment, and you can't EV it to live like a Specs or a Life Orb one. You can only EV it to live a Sash one, almost max investment. So I don't think it's worth running. Necrozma is bad. Zacian, I'm going to put in A. Zacian is just pretty fast, outspeeds basically everything in the format except Calyrex Shadow, and can just do a lot of damage. I think it pairs really well with Chien-Pao, so you can have just really powerful Steel, Fairy, and Fighting moves really fast, paired with Chien-Pao, which will help a lot against Calyrex Shadow. Its ability has been nerfed, but I don't think that's too much of an issue. It just means you have to be careful when switching it out, keeping in mind that you're not going to get that attack boost when you come back in, but if you just keep it in the back or just lead it and keep it on the field for the whole time, you know, that's not a problem. Regularization, I'm going to put in C just because it's a Fairy type, and Fairy types are really not going to be that bad into this format, but you probably shouldn't use it. Zamazenta, I'm going to put here in B. It's really interesting because you can run like Iron Defense Body Press stuff, which is kind of insane. You'll get to +3 stab body press on a really high defense stat after 1 Iron Defense. And I think that's really powerful, and it's really good into certain restricteds. Any physical restricted, outside of maybe Zacian, because that might have Sacred Sword, you just need to get 1 body press up and you basically wall them. So it's almost an auto win into stuff like Calyrex Ice, but the trade-off is you're then running a restricted that's not as great into stuff like Miraidon, Calyrex Shadow, and Kyogre, so it's probably not worth running it a lot of the time, but a restricted that can completely shut down other restricteds is never going to be objectively bad. Zamazenta normal, don't use it, it's just bad. Eternatus, I'm gonna put in like low B. You can maybe run like Cosmic Power stuff, but it is weak to Psychic. I guess you can Terror it, but then you're using your Terror on something that's just going to set up Cosmic Power, probably Toxic, and just recover, and you're leaving yourself very open to crits in that case. And even potentially losing off of Timer. Here's my tier list. I can definitely see Kyogre and Miraidon moving up to S. Maybe any of these could move up to S. Terapagos I also think is going to be very interesting because all of these like to do a lot of damage. Terapagos is a lot slower. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Is there anything that you think I definitely got wrong or what you agree with? Please like, comment, subscribe. You can always unsubscribe later, and yeah.